on 3 o'clock one.
Yes. Indeed, Gary.
There's behind me there, but
Siege pieces. Yeah, no, they're chosen. What do you use? Talking about you and siege.
See, that's the funny thing. I missed out on the one later ones. There's
Plus the Irish, something not really been into.
what are we waiting for?
We're waiting for Gary to come back.
I've got a 10 shilling.
All right.
Concentrated on this.
Right, start there.
Must
get paper there.
We're waiting for Peter as well. Anyway, he's just
Oh, you get a little bit. Maybe it's all right.
But we can start with that.
We'll have to.
I'm recording.
Oh, yeah.
Set themselves the target. They usually they wouldn't click anything else. I've prevented
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think we'll make a start, and then I'll introduce Stephen Appleton, who's the master of the machine there, and is temporarily handed over his role.
I've got the mouse over here.
All right. Okay, Stephen Appleton to talk to us on elements.
Okay, my paper is titled Numismatic Table of the Elements. If speak about what you know is a valid aphorism, then my speaking about the periodic table as it relates to numismatics is perfectly fine. As an analytical chemist with specialization in inorganic chemistry, identifying and quantifying these elements is what I do for a living. But a little background first. What is an element? The ancients believed in 4 elements. So here's the ancient periodic table. Air, fire and water. They believed every substance in the universe was composed of a mixture of these 4 elements. Scientific advancement over the past 2,500 years or so saw this universal model replaced with another, more complicated model, though keeping with the same basic principle. We now recognise over 100 different elements, and everything in the universe that is made of matter is made of these elements, either in pure form or more commonly as mixtures of multiple elements. Every physical object in the universe is comprised of atoms. The ancient Greek philosopher Democritus discovered the concept of the atom in a thought experiment sometime around 400 BC, but he had no way of actually measuring or observing atoms. They were way too small. He had no way to link these atoms to the 4 elements that they believed to exist. But during the 19th century, a theory gradually arose that linked atoms and elements together. The structure of each element's atoms can be used to sort the elements into what's called the periodic table. We have it up on the screen here. As a very general guide, the elements are sorted by atomic number. This is the number of protons that the element has in each atomic nucleus. It is this number of protons in the atoms of each element that determines the chemical and physical properties of that element. If an atom has 6 protons in its nucleus, it is a carbon atom. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If it has 79 protons, it's a gold atom. 79. Elements cannot transmutate into other elements without some kind of nuclear reaction happening to add or remove protons, which is why the ancient alchemist's quest to turn lead into gold was ultimately futile. So, which elements are we likely to find in our numismatic items? Let's find out by going through the periodic table, one element at a time. I should point out, don't worry, a lot of the elements, no story, just on to the next element, won't take long. Should point out there are 2 ways of finding these elements. The items themselves might be made of those elements, or there might be a picture of something made of or using that element. So let's begin. Element number 1, hydrogen, the most abundant element in the universe. On Earth it is most commonly found in the form of dihydrogen monoxide, also known as water. It's also found in polymers, both natural polymers, such as the cellulose in the paper of our banknotes, or the wood of our wooden nickels, and in synthetic polymers, such as the various forms of plastic. If you want a coin design representing hydrogen, perhaps the best are German 3 and 5 Reichmark coins of 1930 depicting the hydrogen-filled airship Graf Zeppelin.
1920. Is it 1929?
1929 was the world flight. The coin was made in 1930. Element number 2, helium. It's one of the few elements in the universe that cannot be frozen no matter how cold you make it. And it's completely chemically inert. So no, nothing can be made from helium. Now for a picture of helium, you've got some airships again. Any non-German airship will do. And since the name of the element derives from helios, the Greek word for sun, maybe a coin depicting helios. Element number 3, lithium. A lightweight, highly reactive metal with no known numismatic applications. However, this stylized picture of an atom found on Greek 10 drachma coins commemorating the philosopher Democritus, remember I mentioned him earlier, the guy who first thought of the idea of atoms. So that's a coin commemorating him, that's Democritus over there on the obverse, and this is a picture of an atom. It's got 3 electrons around it, which must mean there's 3 protons, which must mean it's a lithium atom. Element number 4, beryllium, a metal with very few specific industrial applications, none of which really apply to numismatics. If you collect wind-up watches, or if you have one of those gimmicky coins with a wind-up watch inside it, the springs may be made of a beryllium alloy. It's also a vital component of the gemstones beryl and emerald. Element number 5, boron. It's not boring, but numismatically it actually is. Next. Carbon. Common and extremely versatile element. In pure elemental form, it might appear in numismatic items containing diamond, graphite or charcoal. A good item to represent this element in your collection in pure form would be the compressed coal dust Notgeld coins from the town of Rothenburg. It's coal dust, so it's black. You just can't get a good picture of it. However, like hydrogen, carbon is also found in natural and organic polymers and compounds. Carbon is also a small but important component in cast iron and low-grade steel, up to 4%. And you can also find it on your more corroded coins. The green patina that forms on old copper and bronze coins usually has copper carbonate as the major component. Number 7, nitrogen. Most commonly found on Earth in the form of nitrogen gas, 78% of the Earth's atmosphere. Nitrogen-containing compounds are often quite reactive. Things like ammonia, trinitrotoluene or TNT, and nitric acid, the primary component of aqua regia, one of the few solvents capable of dissolving gold. Nitrogen is found in most proteins, so any numismatic item made of leather, silk or horn, let's say leather Notgeld, would qualify. Another good representative is items made of cellulose nitrate, such as the Cocos-Keeling Islands tokens of 1913. Number 8, oxygen. While vital to life on Earth, it is one of the numismatists' worst enemies. Oxygen gas, O2, will react with virtually every metallic element, forming metal oxides. So unless you exclusively collect gold, silver and platinum group items, you will have some oxygen in your collection. It is also a major component of cellulose, so paper and wooden items can be counted. If you want an image of something with oxygen, I don't know, something with a scuba diver. Element number 9, fluorine. An extremely reactive substance with minimal numismatic relevance. The only example that occurs to me are the cryolite mining tokens of Greenland. Cryolite, or aluminum hexafluoride, is a fluorine-containing compound that is essential for aluminium refining, which is why they dug it all out of Greenland. Element number 10, neon. Another inert gas which, like helium, is difficult to obtain numismatically unless you can incorporate neon signs in your collection somehow. Oh, there it is. Element number 11, sodium. Soft, highly reactive metallic element. A piece of pure sodium dropped into water bursts into flames and explodes. So sodium metal coinage is out of the question. Sodium is more commonly encountered in the form of table salt, sodium chloride, the major component of seawater salt. Primitive money enthusiasts might get themselves some ancient salt cones. These are some ancient Roman salt cones. Sodium can be found combined with other elements in various gemstones such as jade and lapis lazuli, and in clay-based ceramics. Number Number 12, magnesium. Another soft, highly reactive metal, most visible in everyday experience, is the basis for the burning brightness of fireworks and similar pyrotechnics. While small quantities of magnesium are sometimes added to aluminium alloy, and they sometimes use quite large components in mag wheels. That's what the mag in mag wheel stands for, magnesium. It did surprise me to discover that several countries have issued aluminium magnesium alloy coins. In 1999 to 2002, Romania issued some circulating coins made of 5% magnesium alloy. The locals hated them due to their rapid corrosion. Number 13. I missed it.
Oops, back.
It's number 12.
Whoop. Hang on.
Aluminium.
Okay. Right, aluminium. Last we come to the first truly numismatic element. This is a modern metal, first created in 1824, but remaining an expensive oddity until the alumina cryolite electrolytic process was invented in 1886. Used since the late 1800s as a cheap metal for coins, medals, badges and more. Communist countries in particular are notorious for issuing many of their coins from this cheap, worthless metal. This is from Kampuchea, or Vietnamese-occupied Cambodia. Australia has never issued pure aluminium coins, but our golden coins are made of an alloy containing 6% aluminium. Crystalline aluminium oxide is known as corundum. Slightly contaminated corundum forms gemstones such as rubies and sapphires. Next element, number 14, silicon. In pure elemental form, it is not only rather reactive, but mostly useless. Slightly and carefully contaminated, it forms the basis of the silicon chip at the heart of the technological revolution. Numismatically, this would include the gimmicky coin clocks and other computerized coins, as well as the more obvious stored value cards and microchip credit cards. Some modern tokens, this is a plastic token I own from Istanbul Tramways, contain chips as well. Silicon dioxide can be found in sand and in things made from sand, such as glass and vitreous enamel. Most common ceramics are also made from a silicon-based matrix. Element number 15 is phosphorus, which in the form of phosphate is essential for agriculture but has minimal numismatic application. For imagery on coins, I can't see a coin from Nauru and not think of the phosphate mining that turned the island into a moonscape. Element number 16, sulfur. This is another element that's an enemy of collectors of bright, shiny objects. It is particularly notorious as being the cause of tarnish on silver, but will also discolour most other metals apart from gold. Sulfur compounds are also usually black, making sulfur corrosion worse looking in general. Finally, sulfur is generally the cause of paper objects turning yellow with age and self-destructing, usually sulfur that was embedded in the paper during its manufacture. Sulfuric acid is quite corrosive. It is not only the main active ingredient in tarnish removing dip, but sulfuric acid embedded in PVC plastic is also the cause of PVC damage. Element number 17, chlorine. Chlorine gas has no numismatic significance, but as chloride is found in many compounds, from sodium chloride to copper chloride, which we can find in verdigris, to polyvinyl chloride, PVC, used in cheap coin album pages. For depictions on coins, something depicting the ocean, I don't know, there's some corrosion. Next element. Oh, PVC pages. Yeah. Next element, argon. Another noble gas, the most common one in Earth's atmosphere. Storing your coin collection in an airtight box that was filled with argon would be an excellent option for preserving it indefinitely. A pity you could never open up the box and actually look at your coins. Element number 19, potassium. Like sodium, its neighbour in the periodic table, potassium is a highly reactive metal with very little numismatic application. Found in small quantities in seawater, various rocks and minerals. Number 20, calcium, another highly reactive metal, but one which nevertheless finds a numismatic niche due to an unusual property of the element. Most of its salts are not soluble in water. Calcium carbonate in particular is found in many things, but numismatically it is what seashells are made of. So your money carriers and other seashell-based primitive money can represent this element, as can teeth and bone. The famous stone money from Yap Island is made of limestone, which is also calcium carbonate based. There's calcium in milk, so you could also put a milk token there if you wanted to. Element number 21, scandium. This is the first element we come to which most everybody would say, huh, never heard of it. This metallic element has properties very similar to aluminium, but this element is much scarcer. There's only one scandium mine on the planet in the United States. It would be a great metal for coins, but nobody's tried it yet. Number 22, titanium. A lightweight space-age metal, most commonly used in alloying steel for strength. It is too difficult to work with to be circulating coinage metal, but it has been used in certain space-themed NCLT coins, notably as the core for some bimetallic coins from Gibraltar to the year 2000. Also they did this one here for the penny black stamp. Titanium is one of a small number of metals that can be anodized to give different colours. This Gibraltar coin takes full advantage of this phenomenon by making it black. Element number 23, vanadium. Its properties are similar to titanium. I'm not aware of any numismatic items containing vanadium. If you collect tools, you've got some vanadium. Number 24, chromium. This metal is hard and brittle but very shiny, so it has often been used in small amounts, either alloyed or in a stainless steel, such as Italy's acromonital alloy, or plated onto the coin. Perhaps the most noted chrome-plated steel coins are the Canadian 5-cent pieces of 1944-1954. Number 25, manganese. Like many elements in this part of the periodic table, manganese is a hard, brittle and difficult to strike metal, so it's not used as a pure element for coins. But it is used as an alloying agent in certain coins. The United States in particular has made considerable use of it, first during World War II as a component of the silver-nickel 5-cent pieces, and much later as part of the recipe for the golden dollar, 3.5% manganese there. Element number 26, iron. This is the first element in our list that was known to the ancients, though they did not recognize it as a separate element. 100% pure iron is actually rather hard to make and also rather useless, as it is quite soft and rusts easily. It's therefore almost always alloyed with one or more other elements to make an alloy we call steel. Iron coins can be found as far back as coins themselves, or even further. The ancient Greek obol was originally a stick of raw iron, before it became a much more reasonable form of money in the form of a small silver coin. Ancient Roman debased silver coins were often debased with iron, to the extent that some, quote, copper, unquote, coins will stick to a magnet. Medieval China and Japan also made considerable use of cast iron coins at times and places when copper was in short supply. Mild carbon steel, 95% iron, also rusts easily, but was cheap and readily available. So many coins and tokens from the World War I period are made of iron. And into the current era, where steel is so much cheaper than traditional coinage metals, most countries now use plated steel for their circulating coins. It's an acromonital alloy Italian coin at the end there. Number 27, cobalt. Unlike its two neighbouring elements, cobalt sees very little numismatic use, apart from trace amounts being added to glass and vitreous enamel to impart a vivid blue colour. So if you've got blue enamelled things, it's probably blue from cobalt. In metal form, it's actually quite toxic. The name derives from the German word kobold, or evil spirit. I did find one gimmicky coin made in the name of Cameroon, made of cobalt-plated iron. Take it or leave it. Element number 28, nickel. Another industrial age wonder metal which has seen considerable use in coins. It was even used in ancient times, long before the element was properly identified and isolated. Certain coins of ancient Bactria are made from copper ore that was naturally high in nickel, resulting in a very silvery looking alloy that today we call cupronickel. Canada, one of the world's largest nickel producers, made coins from pure nickel from the 1960s up till 1996. France made pure nickel coins for itself and its colonies because of nickel mines in New Caledonia. but normally the element is found in alloy form as copper and nickel, or as nickel plating on steel. Nickel has fallen out of favour as a coinage metal in some parts of the world, partly because of price and partly because some people have developed an allergic reaction to it. If you want a pure nickel coin with a nickel design theme, then Canada's 1951 commemorative 5-cent piece for the 200th anniversary of the discovery of nickel is an excellent choice. In Canada they have a monument they call the Big Nickel in Sudbury near the nickel mine. A giant replica of this coin could be constructed on the highway. Element number 29, copper. One of the 7 metals of antiquity. The name is derived from Cyprium, the Latin name for Cyprus, the island from which most of the ancient world's copper supply was sourced. And since antiquity, people have known that to turn soft, flexible copper into something much harder and more durable, you need to add a small amount of tin to make the alloy known as bronze. The Chinese were the first civilization to make bronze artifacts specifically for use as money. Bronze formed the backbone of the Chinese currency system for over 3,000 years. Another significant alloy of copper is brass, which is made by adding zinc instead of tin. Brass was known in the ancient world, though the separate element zinc was not. The Romans called brass orichalcum. Copper-based alloys were used as a mainstay of circulation coinages by most countries up until very recently. Copper-plated steel is more likely to be seen these days due to the cheaper price. But all Australian circulating coins at the moment are predominantly made of copper. Element number 30, zinc. Pure zinc is a very reactive metal and generally quite unsuitable for use as a coinage metal. This has not stopped many countries from resorting to its use. It has the advantage of being cheap and of being largely unnecessary to modern warfare, so many countries used it during World War II, most notably Nazi Germany and its allies in conquered states. In more recent times, Denmark, Peru and the United States have used zinc in their small denomination coinage. The main problem with zinc is that after even a brief period in circulation, it loses its silvery luster, and in a typically moist, humid environment will quickly turn black from the formation of zinc sulfide, or occasionally white from the formation of zinc oxide. Zinc is, as noted above, an essential component of brass, and zinc plating, known as galvanizing, is an important anti-corrosion mechanism for steel and iron. Galvanized steel cents were struck by the United States in 1943. Number 31, gallium, is a metal that is most renowned for having a low melting point. It will literally melt in your hand. Picture? As such, it has very minimal numismatic application because everything you alloy gallium with will also melt in your hand. Numbers 32, germanium, and 33, arsenic, and 34, selenium are all semi-metallic elements with no known application in numismatics. Number 35, bromine. This is one of only 2 elements that are liquid at room temperature, the other of course being mercury. Bromine is not, however, metallic. It is chemically very similar to chlorine. It can be found in sea salt. 1 bromide salt has some application for collectors of historical memorabilia. Silver bromide forms the basis of original black and white photography because silver bromide breaks down to silver metal and bromine gas when exposed to bright light. Element number 36, krypton. Another noble gas, similar to argon but heavier and even rarer in the Earth's atmosphere. The name derives from the Greek word for hidden. Though the element has nothing to do with Superman or his home planet or kryptonite, some Superman-themed coins or memorabilia are probably the closest you're going to get to representing this element in your collection. Number 37, rubidium, and number 38, strontium, are scarcer, heavier and more chemically reactive analogues of potassium and calcium. They likewise have minimal numismatic application. Number 39, yttrium, is a metallic element with no direct numismatic use, but may nevertheless be of use to numismatists. Many supermagnets, including high-temperature superconductors, have yttrium as a prime component in the ceramic matrix. Number 40, zirconium, named for the semi-precious gemstone zircon, in which the element is most commonly encountered, composed of zirconium silicate, in a crystalline form that superficially resembles diamond, making cubic zircons a cheap alternative to costume jewellery. The only direct numismatic application I'm aware of are the gimmicky locket coins that Perth Mint's been putting out recently. They usually contain some zircons as fake diamonds. So you've got genuine rubies, genuine sapphires, and fake diamonds made of zirconium. Element number 41, niobium. a metallic element that has seen some minor use in coinage. Austria has a long-running series of bimetallic silver niobium coins. Because niobium can be anodized easily, like aluminium and titanium, niobium can be a bright permanent colour. Austria is not the only country making such coins, but everyone who does make niobium coins is making them brightly coloured through the anodizing process. Element number 42, molybdenum. This metallic element has one of the highest melting points of all the elements, meaning that the technology to work with it didn't exist prior to World War II. In pure form, is impractical as a coinage metal, though it has some application in certain alloys. Element number 43, technetium, is radioactive. That's why I've put the name in red. It's not found in nature. Element number 44, ruthenium, is a scarce and brittle metal, the lightest of the 6 platinum group metals. Coins made of palladium usually contain trace amounts of ruthenium, as the two elements are hard to separate. The only specific mention of ruthenium on coinage I could find was a private mint that was adding a black ruthenium plating to bullion coins and selling them for a huge markup. I'm not going to give them my money just to own a piece of ruthenium. Element number 45, rhodium, is a platinum group metal which has seen some minor numismatic applications. White gold, essentially artificial electrum, is sometimes given a thin rhodium coating to make it shinier. It is considered a precious metal, though its highly volatile price means investors are wary of stockpiling the metal, and few mints have attempted to make coins from it. This is a coin from Rwanda that one of the mints are made, 1/25th of an ounce, so you don't have to pay too much for it. But rhodium coins are easily the most expensive bullion coin per ounce that are readily available on the market. It's about $10,000 an ounce at the moment, which sounds like a lot, but 2 years ago it was $20,000 an ounce. So volatile, as I said. Number 46, palladium, named after the asteroid Pallas, which was discovered at about the same time as the element was in the early 1800s. It's regarded as a precious metal today, primarily because of the combination of rarity and usefulness. It is a primary ingredient in catalytic converters. Because of this, it has joined the ranks of bullion metals, and you can find coins made from it. Investors consider it the poor man's platinum, as it is cheaper than platinum. Australia made palladium emus in the 1990s. We had to import the palladium because we don't make it ourselves. Palladium is also of interest for its capacity to absorb hydrogen. This property was known over 100 years ago, giving rise to the palladium hydrogenium medals being struck back in the Victorian era. The palladium hydride, the hydrogen gradually escapes, so you can't use that coin as an example of hydrogen in your collection because it's all gone. Number 47, silver. This is of course one of the 3 classical coinage metals. The very first coins were made of electrum, a naturally occurring alloy of silver and gold. Coins of pure silver followed not long afterwards. Silver was a mainstay of coinage worldwide up until the 1960s, when the silver price spike saw most countries withdraw their silver coins. It has remained a staple of bullion coin producers, though there was one attempt at reintroducing silver back into circulation. Mexico produced circulating bimetallic silver coins in the early 1990s. It's just an example of an Australian silver coin. There you go. Element number 48, cadmium. Cadmium is a toxic heavy metal which in its pure form is quite soft and generally regarded as unsuitable for coinage. However, like chromium, cadmium is a very shiny metal. This is why it was sometimes used for plating, and numismatically, most notably, some medals by the Sydney Coin Club struck around the time of the decimal currency changeover were made with a cadmium finish. Another possible source of cadmium in your collection are the irradiated dimes put out by various atomic agencies in America. A tiny amount of the silver in the dime has been permanently transmuted into cadmium via neutron bombardment. Element number 49, indium, an extremely soft metal with no known numismatic interest. Number 50 is tin. This is also one of the 7 metals of antiquity, though the ancients had little use for the pure metal itself. Rather, they used all the tin they obtained to alloy with copper to produce bronze. Pure tin is quite chemically reactive and readily turns black in circulation, but tin coins and primitive money can be found from certain tin-rich areas, such as England and Southeast Asia. So there's a Thai tin coin there from the 1940s, and collectors of English series know of the tin farthings and halfpennies. Tin also features, yeah, I mentioned that. That's one of the earliest bimetallic coins, a tin plug or a copper plug in the tin halfpenny, James II, 1685. Tin has one unusual property. At a temperature of 13 degrees C or below, it begins to morph from a crystalline metal into a crumbly amorphous non-metal, a process known as tin pest. Once it begins, the process is irreversible. Tin pest has destroyed many old tin artifacts stored in cool climates, including coins. Tin is also used as a plating for corrosion resistance and lent its name to the tinny badges that some of us collect. Element number 51, antimony. This semi-metallic solid is quite brittle and tends to crumble when handled. You'd think this would make it completely unsuitable as a coinage element, but the people of Guizhou province in China had very little coinage metal at hand, but plenty of antimony, which was mined locally. So they made a small series of coins out of it. These coins are now quite scarce. I do not have one. If you have one for sale, let me know. I will talk to you. If these coins are too hard to obtain, then a piece made from old pewter can represent this element. Pewter is traditionally an alloy of tin and antimony. We now have a whole string of elements that aren't very numismatic. Tellurium, number 52, brittle semi-metal. Iodine, 53, a volatile solid. Xenon, number 54, a rare noble gas. Cesium, 55, and barium, 56 are heavier analogues of rubidium and strontium. Then we come to a series of elements known as the rare earth elements. A whole bunch of elements. We've got lanthanum, cerium, praseodymium, neodymium, promethium, samarium, europium, gadolinium, terbium, dysprosium, holmium, erbium, thulium, ytterbium, and lutetium. I didn't have to practice that. These elements are, as the name implies, rare. They also all have very similar chemical and physical properties. One of them is only radioactive, number 61 there. Europium is quite active in air, but all the others very similar chemical properties. And I've not heard of any of them being used to make a metal, let alone a coin. Number 72, hafnium, a toxic metal that is chemically very similar to zirconium and usually found in trace amounts in zircons. Its use in the nuclear power industry means refining and purifying hafnium is highly regulated, so no coins are likely. Number 73, tantalum, chemically very similar to niobium but much rarer. It has niche applications in making alloys both corrosion resistant and strong. Kazakhstan has made some space-themed bimetallic NCLT coins out of this space-age metal. As with niobium, it can be anodized to give varying colours. Number 74, tungsten. This metal has the highest melting point of any element at an astonishing 3,422 degrees Celsius. It would melt on the surface of the sun, but only barely. It is also very tough and difficult to machine, making working with tungsten very difficult and expensive. It is also renowned for its density, being very similar to that of gold, despite being considerably cheaper than gold. Chinese counterfeiters have in recent years been making gold-wrapped tungsten ingots and coins that are impossible to discern just by weight. The only way to find out is to drill a hole in the thing. Because XRF will only go into the very thin surface of an object that's gold. So if you wrap it in gold foil, yeah, it's a very expensive chocolate bar. Number 75, rhenium, a platinum group metal, even rarer than platinum. Scraping together enough rhenium to make a coin is not an easy task. No country seems to have made rhenium coins yet. Number 76, osmium, a platinum group metal, though more reactive than the others. It smells bad. The name comes from the Greek word for smell. Due to the formation of the volatile poisonous tetroxide, OSO4. It's also the densest element, even heavier than gold and platinum. It once had widespread practical applications with osmium majority alloys used in record player styluses and fountain pen nibs, but I am unaware of any direct numismatic applications. Number 77, iridium, platinum group metal, very rare, noted for its extreme chemical resistance. It also demonstrates very little thermal expansion. When you heat it cold, it doesn't expand or contract much, making it the ideal substance for the standard meter, which is a piece of platinum iridium alloy exactly 1 meter long, held in the Louvre in Paris. Everybody else's meter in the world is measured compared to that meter in Paris. Its hardness makes it impractical to create coins from it economically. Number 78, platinum, one of the few metallic elements to occur naturally on the Earth's surface. Platinum nuggets can be found in the rivers of Colombia and Russia. Its similar density to gold means that in earlier centuries it was often used to make counterfeit gold coins and other objects. But its industrial usefulness means that it is now regarded as being on par with gold in terms of value and is seen as the prestige bullion metal. One country has of course made a series of circulating platinum coins, the Russian Empire in the 1830s. If you've got one of those and you don't mind selling it for the bullion price, I will happily talk to you. The Australian platinum bullion coin is the koala, though unlike the other Australian bullion coins, all of Australia's platinum has to be imported from either South Africa or Russia. I think most of our platinum comes from. You can make some platinum as a byproduct from nickel refining. I don't know if Clive Palmer's mob up in Townsville was making any platinum on the side. You can get some of it that way, but it's difficult and expensive. Element number 79, gold. Gold has many unique properties. It is highly corrosion resistant, can be found as pure nuggets on the Earth's surface in certain locations. It's one of only 2 metallic elements that is not grey or silvery in colour. And this combination of colour and natural shininess has made gold the premier metal for jewellery for thousands of years. Gold coins are made from almost the dawn of coinage, and the purity and abundance of gold coin was seen as a sign of the prosperity of a country. Gold ceased to circulate freely in coinage after World War I, but is still commonly made into bullion coins as well as other numismatic collectibles. Okay, like that. Number 80, mercury. The ancients knew how to make mercury, and it fascinated them because unlike every other metal known to them, and unlike every other metal known to us, which has to be heated to red hot before it would melt, mercury remains liquid at room temperature, and even below the freezing point of water it is still liquid. There's no direct numismatic application due to the tendency for it to lower the melting point of anything it is alloyed with. You will find it in solder and dental amalgam. You may also find it in counterfeit coins. Brass counterfeits would often be given a mercury wash prior to being spent to try to impart a more silvery colour to make fake coins. Mercury applied in this way will evaporate over time, but the forger wouldn't obviously care about that. Number 81, thallium, highly toxic, makes great rat poison with terrible coins, no known numismatic use. Number 82, lead, is the last of the 7 metals of antiquity. Lead was used for tokens and other low value numismatic items, but rarely appears in coinage proper. Its softness and perceived low value has historically made it unsuitable. Though occasionally, if an empire fell upon hard times, lead might be used for coinage. This is an example from Southern Han Dynasty, China. You can probably find more than a trace of it in debased coinage, such as the Potine tetradrachms of Roman Egypt or Celtic Britain. In more modern times, is perhaps best noted in communion tokens. Number 83, bismuth, the last non-radioactive element in the periodic table. Bismuth is a brittle semi-metal with no known numismatic use. The only, quote, use I am aware of for this substance at all is to make the alloy woods metal, which melts if you put it in warm water. It was once used to make practical joke teaspoons. Elements 84 and above are all radioactive. Means they are not normally found in nature outside of a supernova explosion, though they can be extracted from nuclear waste. The radiation makes them both dangerous and highly regulated by government agencies, so making coins from them is rather unlikely. For completeness, we have polonium, astatine, radon, francium, radon, actinium, thorium, and protactinium. There is one exception to the whole radioactive elements don't occur on Earth rule. This is, of course, uranium, element number 92. Uranium has a half-life of millions of years, meaning that there's still plenty of it sitting around since before the creation of the Earth. uranium is actually more common on the Earth's surface than gold, though it rarely forms concentrated ore masses suitable for mining and refining. A collector can obtain uranium in one of two ways: uranium glass, a pale yellow-green finish that was fashionable prior to World War II, and a single known metal. A German company made uranium medals in 1956. They even sold them in a lead-lined box so you didn't irradiate yourself. If an actual radioactive coin is out of your price range and nuclear security clearance, then maybe a coin depicting a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier or submarine will suffice for your collection. All elements above uranium, such as plutonium, number 94, are highly radioactive and are only found in nuclear reactors, nuclear waste, nuclear weapon detonation sites, and supernovas. And finally, for the periodic table of the elements collector who's not satisfied with the whole not suitable for coinage argument I've been putting forward for many of these elements, there is a way to cheat. An American company, Metallium Incorporated, has set about attempting to make and sell coins, actually small medals, from as many different elements as possible. As the periodic table, all the ones in green are the ones they already have made medals for, the ones in blue are the ones they're trying but haven't been able to quite get there yet, and the ones in white they've given up on. They currently make coins out of 58 elements, and for the low price of just US $5,000, you can purchase the complete set. Thank you.
Well, there you have it. Well worth spending a couple more minutes than the 30 minutes allotted. That's wonderful. Any questions? All staggered, Stephen. As was I. Thank you very much, sir. Well done. Well,
Mystery story.
the story of King Arthur, as told by Judith Wood.
I can see you over this. Can you see me?
Yeah, I think I had.
I can see you, but I'm standing up.
No, you're visible.
I should tell you a little bit about the name Arthur. As many of you would know, you would have heard of King Arthur of Cornwall, the mythical King Arthur, question mark. But did you know that it's also a popular name in the French province of Brittany, because they were both Celtic areas, and it's well known that the Breton language and the Welsh and Cornish languages were all Celtic, and that they could, in ancient times and even in modern times, communicate with each other using their own versions of the Celtic languages. So there is a connection between a geographical and a cultural connection between Brittany and England, and that sets the scene for this medieval mystery story. Can we go to the first point? Now, this is a coin that has no name on it, and it's got an unusual design. It's obviously medieval. It sparked my curiosity enormously, and it led to the unravelling of a story that is really at the junction between numismatics, history, folklore, and literature. So I found it a fascinating mystery story, and I hope that you will too. Let's move on, and I'll show you the first. That's the obverse. It's an unusual design. I think it's meant to be a cross, but it's sort of bent over on the ends. The inscription is the important thing. It reads Dux Britanniae, Duke of Brittany. There's no name on it. So let's look at the other side. This is the reverse. You can see it's Christian because of the cross. It has an inscription that says Redonus Sivi, which is the city of Ren in Latin. It was one of the three cities that have at times been capital of Brittany. In medieval times, it was an independent duchy, but it did owe feudal allegiance to the King of France. So that's all we can find out really from the coin, except that the general look of it is obviously medieval and European. So that's the start. Let's go now and see what we can find from numismatic sources. Well, before we do, let's look at the Duchy of Brittany. It's the brown one on the left. Rennes is sort of, actually the arrow's pointing too far over, it's about there. But anyway, it's just to show you where Brittany is. You can see it's right immediately south of Cornwall. And you can see how the Celtic connections across the channel apply. Let's move on quickly then. This catalogue just happened to be in David's extensive numismatic library. It's the coins of the dukes, the counts and dukes of Brittany, which was very handy. And in that, I found that there was a period between 1186 and 1282 where there was no name for any duke that issued these coins. We know that later coins of Brittany show varying numbers of ermine tails, which are a symbol of Brittany. But this coin has no ermine tails, so we've narrowed down the dates, really, to between 1186 and 1237. To complicate matters, it was a common practice in medieval times for a coin to be issued in the name of the ruler's father, so that, for example, a coin of Henry II looks the same as a coin of one of his children, like Richard I or John I, and so the name on it is the father, but there are other ways of finding out that it's a coin of the son rather than the father. Okay, so that's what we can find out from this catalogue. So let's see what else we can find out. Now, this is a wonderful shortcut, so I didn't have to do all this research myself. We found out that it could have been one of 4 people who was in charge of Brittany in that period. Geoffrey II as Duke of Brittany, his widow, Constance. They had a son called Arthur. There's your first clue. And he was Duke only for about 2 years. He was still quite young when he died, and that's part of the mystery. Or it could possibly have been Constance's 3rd husband. We'll come back to Constance and her family in a little while. Let's go on quickly now. So let's look at the first contender, Duke Geoffrey. Who was he? Well, he was a Duke of Brittany. There's an extract from the catalogue there that's got his name on it, Guthfridus, which is the Latin for Geoffrey, and Dux Britanni, so we know it was Geoffrey, Duke of Brittany. And so we know then that it could have been Duke Geoffrey II. Okay, now that's the only coin in image in this presentation that is not in our collection. David tried to get that one in an auction, and it far exceeded our expectations of price. So it could have possibly have been a coin of Geoffrey, but it's unlikely really, because he issued other coins in his own name, and that's one of them there, and it's a very different design from the one the anonymous coin that we just looked at. So the next contender is Arthur, Geoffrey's son. All right, now, we need to know a bit about Geoffrey's father first before we can talk, Arthur's father. No, sorry. Let's start again. Geoffrey's father, because he was the fourth son of Henry II and Eleanor of Aquitaine. And this is a very fanciful genealogical table from a medieval manuscript. And you can see there that Geoffrey is right in the middle. He's the fifth child of Henry and Eleanor of Aquitaine, Henry II of England. You'll notice that Geoffrey was the fourth son. But he was also the brother of Richard I and King John of England. We'll come back to the genealogy of this family in a little while, but let's see what else we can find about Arthur. Well, before we do that, we better have a look at some of the interesting coins. You can see they're all of similar style to the anonymous one we're trying to identify, and the one of Geoffrey. They all be clearly from around about the same period of European history. We've got Henry II, of two types there. I rather like the short cross one because it's got a good portrait. Portrait coins at that time, as you can see, are all very cartoonish. Then we've got one of Aquitaine. Now remember that Geoffrey's mother, Arthur's grandmother, was Eleanor of Aquitaine. And her coins have this word ducicit on them. Not dux. Dux meaning duke. And then Henry, of course, in his right of being husband of Eleanor, was allowed to call himself Duke of Aquitaine. So the complication there was that Aquitaine owed feudal allegiance to the King of France, while Henry was King of England at the same time. Okay, so now, can we move on to Stephen? This is Arthur's mother. She was married to Geoffrey. Her father was Duke of Brittany, and she became a Duchess of Brittany in her own right. She also happened to have the title Countess of Richmond. When we think of Richmond, I tend to think of Richmond Park in London, but it wasn't. It was a place, a large county in the north of Yorkshire. Henry II was so powerful that he made Constance marry again, something that she proceeded to reverse as soon as Henry disappeared. And then she married a third time and had two children, but she didn't last all that long. Let's move on and see what else we can find out about this family. Can we go to the next one, Stephen?
Yep, that's it. Well, you want the next one after that?
Yeah. That was her Constance's third husband. Do we think that coins were issued by, that this kind could have been issued by him? Well, it raises more questions than answers, really. Why would he not have used his own name in the inscription? There was another complication that King Philip II of France took over the duchy in the middle of his reign. And then, well, you can read the rest of the history there if you're interested. So that was the fourth possible contender. Out of all those, I have a suspicion that Constance was the most likely one, and I'll tell you why in a little while. Can we continue now? What do we know about Arthur then? This is the son of Geoffrey, the grandson of Henry II and Eleanor of Aquitaine. He had a sister who was known as the Fair Maid of Brittany, who met a rather unpleasant fate, which I'll tell you about shortly. He was born posthumously as Geoffrey's son. Geoffrey was killed in a riding accident a few months before Arthur was born. So he was brought up mainly in the French court, and you can just see there he is at the French court according to that particular medieval manuscript. Next one, please, Stephen. Well, because he was the son of Geoffrey, he was the grandson of Henry II, he should have been next, he was next really in line for the English throne. And his uncle Richard I, who was his older uncle, gave him the recognition that he was the next in line. But by the time Richard was on his deathbed, Arthur was still only 12. And Richard didn't really think he had a chance in fighting his younger brother John for it. And we'll see why in a minute with John. Philip Augustus, who was King of France, Philip II, and many of the English barons supported Arthur's claim. And Constance, Arthur's mother, was constantly promoting Arthur's claims to the English throne. So King John saw Arthur as quite a threat. So let's see what happened. At this time, there was obviously going to be conflict between Arthur and John, because there were two legal systems and either of them could have prevailed, except that really John was so much older than Arthur that he was most likely to win in this contest. Now, there was a treaty between Philip of France, who was just about to invade England, urged on by Constance and Arthur, but this treaty solved the problem, averted war temporarily, and we'll see on the next slide why. You can see that I'm sorry about the focus of this one. It came off the internet at that focus. I couldn't change it. But you can see all the red in the left-hand map was English, held by the English throne. And France was a very much smaller area. And as a result of some of these conflicts, which we won't go into, you can see how France expanded. But let's go on to continue with Arthur's story. Before we go any further about what happened to Arthur, we need to understand also the importance of the women in the story, the ones highlighted in yellow. I haven't highlighted their mother, Eleanor. She was one of the most powerful women in Europe. And you saw by the previous map how much territory she brought to the English throne. But the other one we need to look at is Eleanor, who became Queen of Castile. She had 11 children by Alfonso VIII of Castile, including Blanche of Castile. Let's go now on to the next one quickly. She agreed to marry Philip's son Louis. So that averted the invasion of England and outright war. Queen Eleanor herself made sure that the marriage went ahead. She travelled all the way to Castile in those days, which was a hard thing, and Eleanor wasn't all that young by that stage, just to make sure that Blanche got safely to Paris for the wedding. These are coins of Alfonso, her father, and that gold one is a very interesting one. It's really a whole other story, but the interesting thing about it is its inscription is in Arabic, but it's not saying anything about Islam. I'll come back. That's another story. So that's just some of their coins. Next one, please. So this is the second part of the mystery. What happened to Arthur? The things that we do know are listed there. Arthur was, as we said, supported by the King of France and his mother. So he decided to invade Normandy, where John held control. He got captured by Arthur, imprisoned in this imposing-looking building here. And when David and I visited that part of Normandy, the ramparts are still very impressive, actually. Arthur disappeared without trace from another castle not far away, and he was only 16. Everybody suspected King John, but nobody could prove it. Let's see what else we can find out. Well, there are three elements to where we can get information from, and when you put them together, it does build up a bit of a picture. First of all, there's popular opinion, then there's chronicles, both of the time and a bit later, and then there's the literature. And this story has occurred many times, been taken up, especially in the 19th century. It became a popular story, even though I hadn't heard anything about either Arthur or this story until I started following up this point. So let's see what popular opinion said. Well, there was very little doubt in people's minds that John was responsible somehow for Arthur's disappearance. They were pretty sure that he had either murdered Arthur himself or ordered his death. Those of you who heard my talk about the King's ransom a few years ago might have remembered that Arthur's uncle Richard had been imprisoned in Europe and held for ransom. And John was the villain in that, one of the villains in that story, because he tried to bribe his jailer so that he could stay as king in England. He was known to be ruthless, and he had a very bad reputation in English history. He also imprisoned Arthur's sister Eleanor. She was known as the Fair Maid of Brittany, and apparently very beautiful. Arthur imprisoned her in England, and she was never released, even after Even after John's death. That's right. And so she never had children, and we all know about Magna Carta, whereby John was forced by his barons to make some concessions. And but I discovered that his role as a villain in the Robin Hood legends didn't start till the 16th century. But he still had a pretty bad rap, didn't he? Okay, so that's the popular opinion. Now let's see what it says, what the chronicles said. Now the first chronicle of Margam Abbey, that was a Welsh chronicle, written in Latin, thank goodness, because nobody can read Welsh much these days except the Welsh. That's what a contemporary chronicler said. I think there's another version of that somewhere in another chronicle, but I wasn't able to track that down. So they blamed John directly. That one blamed John directly. Holinshed, on the other hand, was closer to Shakespeare's time. And Shakespeare relied on that chronicle for most of his plays about the history plays about the kings of England. And so what we've got now then is Holinshed trying to be non-partisan. You can see he's trying to be even-handed, fair-minded perhaps, but he still points out that King John was had in great suspicion, which is a real understatement, isn't it? So what does Shakespeare say? Let's have a look now. Now I've given you some direct extracts from the play. You don't have to read them, especially if you don't like reading early English, well, early modern English. But it presents Hubert de Burgh, who was one of King John's faithful retainers, as having been entrusted with the job of doing away with Arthur. This is according to Shakespeare, you understand. This is in literature. So that's what John is reported, according to Shakespeare, to have ordered at first. Then he seems to have had a change of heart. Let's see what the next one says. Too much to read, isn't it? I know. But I think one of the key bits is here. If I talk to him with his innocent freight, he will await my mercy, which lies dead. Therefore I will be sudden and dispatch. But Arthur keeps sweet-talking him. Are you sick, Hubert? You look pale today. In truth, I would you were a little sick, that I might sit all night and watch with you. I warrant I love you more than you do love me. And poor old Hubert, his words do take possession of my bosom. He shows him the order from King John, which is not nice. King John had ordered him to put out his eyes and castrate him. But Hubert's not able to resist not only their friendship, but Arthur's innocence and youth. So that's Hubert's solution here. I won't carry out this order, he said, but nobody can know. They must think you're dead. Okay, and so how does the story end, Stephen? Well, John believes the rumour that Arthur's dead. He's not only conscience-stricken, but very worried about what's going to happen. He's fearing insurrection. Then Hubert says, oh, don't worry, he's still alive. But at that moment, the news arrives that Arthur has done something silly. Jumped from the castle ramparts, presumably, you saw those cliffs on that, and those castle ramparts, trying to escape. Shakespeare's invented that one for his own reasons, but there's no historical basis for that story. Okay, so now we come to what do we conclude about Arthur's fate? I think this is the last. Okay, so mystery number 1, who issued the coin? Well, we found out that it's Breton, and we found out the dates between which it must have been issued. But we will never know for certain which of those 4 possible contenders issued it. As to whether it was a coin of King Arthur, well, we know that Arthur had a strong claim to be King of England. He could have been, and maybe should have been, King Arthur I of England. Not the mythical King Arthur, he wasn't counted. He probably did exist though. But there's a parallel here. Some of you might know of Shakespeare's other play, Richard III, which cast Richard as the villain, who killed the 2 young princes in the Tower of London. Well, this story of Arthur happened almost 2.5 centuries earlier. Another wily, ruthless and power-hungry uncle. So, we conclude, well, was it a coin of King Arthur? It could have been a coin of Arthur, but not King Arthur of England. If it had been issued by Arthur, it would have been as Duke of Brittany. But, I'm sorry, we will never know the proper answers, the full answers to either of those 2 mysteries. Thank you for your attention.
Well,
Is there a question?
I have an idea for your consideration. A 5th option.
Oh, yes.
It looks to me very much like a Richard I Crusader coin. I don't know how many books you've got on Richard. Well, you'll need a lot more than that one. There's a few down there that might help. But he sometimes put his name on some of his European Crusader coins, but more often than not he did not. But he would have put a duke, put the name Duke on his coins, but not his name, and he was definitely in rank. So there's a lot of coins of his period from Ren. So maybe look at 1189 to 1199.
Yes.
Richard I Crusader pieces, and there is a lot of them, and you may find that coin on it.
Well, actually, this is another reference that's from David's Numismatic Library, the Anglo-Gallic coins by Elias, and that does actually draw attention to the similarity to a Crusader coin of Antioch.
Yeah.
So that is yeah, but the actual design is not similar.
No, it's a little
the
bit
actual
different,
detail, but
but it does
the
look
style is very similar. Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks for the suggestion.
Richard had a lot of that
It's
sort
really
of stuff.
good. Yes.
Well, before we get into the joys of more Anglo-Gallic coins and the debates about Elias or not, I'd like to present you with this certificate.
Thanks.
And thanks for all the hard work you've done there. I'm glad I'm not a genealogist. Particularly not an ancient one.
Yeah, thanks.
Yes.
Now, Barry Scott.
Yeah, coming up.
Got one. Barry's going to talk to us this afternoon about coins, the best known coins of the Bible.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'll tell you a funny little story. I used to go to our church in Launceston, Tasmania, and they persuaded me to join the choir. And they used to say, "Here comes the fiver." And this went on for a number of months, and then I had the courage to say, "Mr. Choirmaster, why does everybody call me a fiver?" And he replied with a twinkle in his eye, "Because we think you're half as good as a tenor." So, I used to read the Old and the New Testament, the readings at church, and I took an interest in the Bible over the years. And being interested in coins, I decided to get a collection of coins. I would acknowledge Colin Pitchfork's huge collection of coins of the Bible and so on, but mine's a little bit more modest, but I believe that I've got some little stories to share with you. So let's move on. Biblical coins are one of the few genuine relics of the most important part of human history. The collection refers to parts of the New Testament where it's reported by people of the time that Jesus used such tokens to illustrate his teachings. They give a certain proof of his existence and they create a link to the life and teachings of Christ. They are simply amazing memorials of antiquity. So next, thanks. This is a popular painting of Jesus, the light of the world. In the Bible stories refer to Jesus, he travelled around Jerusalem, the early holy lands of now Israel. The evidence of the coins of the Bible are revealed in the early scriptures, and the quotes and stories are shown with pictures on the various coins. Next, thanks. Here is a map of the Holy Lands at the time of Jesus. The travels of Jesus around the Holy Lands are depicted on this map. You can see Syria, Phoenicia, Trachonitis, Decapolis, Samaria, the Sea of Galilee, Gallia, and the Dead Sea. Some of you may have been there already. Solomon's temple was created and built about 3 times. It shows the inner temple and the courts of the men and women. The Temple Mount area is where Jesus worshipped and addressed the local inhabitants. Next, thanks. And this is the Temple Mount area as detailed in the earlier slide, shown in yellow below. The upper and lower city areas of Jerusalem are depicted, as well as the Gardens of Gethsemane, Mount of Olives, Hall of Bethesda, and here is the tomb of Jesus there. So it's very interesting if you happen to go to that area to try to track down those places. So next, thanks. First coin I want to share with you is the tribute penny. This is the first best known coin of the Bible. It's recorded in the Gospel according to Luke that Christ held aloft a Roman silver denarius as part of his teachings. A Pharisee or spy asked Jesus whether they should pay Roman taxes or tributes to the authorities. This was an attempt to entrap Jesus into admitting his opposition to do so. Christ avoided the scheme by asking his disciples to show him a denarius. Holding it aloft, he asked, "Whose name and head are on it?" "Caesar's," they replied. "Then give back to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and to God what belongs to God." This coin is now known as a tribute penny, issued under Rome's second emperor, Tiberius, who ruled Rome as Jesus met his death on the cross. The tribute was one of many taxes forced onto the Jewish people by the Roman dominators. The Greek text uses the word denarian, and it is usually thought by scholars that this coin was a Roman denarius with the head of Tiberius. And the inscription is interpreted to read, "Caesar Augustus Tiberius, son of divine Augustus," claiming after death that Augustus had become a god. The reverse shows a seated female, usually identified as Livia, depicted as Pax. She has a hasta or spear in her right hand and an olive branch in her left. It shows she prefers war to peace. The legend expresses one of the emperor's titles, Pontiff Maxim, that is the chief priest or pontiff. It is very interesting to note that the American eagle, which is placed on the coins of the United States, holds in its right talon the olive branch of peace, and its left talon the arrows of war. This variation shows that America prefers war rather than prefers peace rather than war. So there's a little bit of difference which was interpreted and inherited from these earlier days. Let's move on, thanks. This is a painting, tribute money by Titian. Depicts Jesus being shown the denarius or tribute penny with the head of Caesar Augustus Tiberius on it. Next one. We move now to the widow's mite. And here's a painting by James Tissot depicting the widow placing 2 small coins or mites into the treasury as her humble offer. There came a certain poor widow, and she threw in 2 mites. Mark 12:41-44. The small bronze prutas or lepton of the Hasmonean kings are most likely to be the 2 mites that the poor widow threw into the treasury. Minted in the name of Alexander Janneus, the first Hasmonean king to issue coins, they were issued for use across the Holy Lands. The pruta of Janneus depicts an 8-pointed star on one side with an anchor on the other. Jesus was teaching at the Temple of Jerusalem. He sat down and observed how the crowd put money and taxes into the treasury. Many rich people put in large sums. The poor widow also came and put in 2 coins worth a few cents. Calling his disciples to himself, he said to them, "Amen, I say to you, this poor widow put in more than all the other contributors to the treasury. For they have all contributed from their surplus wealth, but she from her poverty has contributed all she had, her whole livelihood." The moral of the story is that in all our good works, everything depends on our intentions at the time. The widow has given more than all the rich, for she parted with her whole fortune. She intended to give all she had to God. This was an act of perfect love and sacrifice. Interesting story. Next one, thanks. How many of you heard of the Shroud of Turin? A length of linen 4.3 metres by 1.1 was purported to be the burial garment of Jesus Christ. It's said to portray 2 images. The back and front of a gaunt 5 foot 7 inches man with a linen folded over. The images contain markings allegedly corresponding to the crucifixion wounds of Jesus. Illustrated are the first facial photograph and then the negative. And the negative shows the picture of Jesus. Next part one, thanks. Now, NASA, USA Digital Study of the Shroud, reported images of the coins above both eyes. This showed the usual practice in the early days of placing coins on the deceased person's eye before burial. On the right eye, they claim to have identified a 2 lepton coin, minted under Pilate AD 2930. The left eye has been covered by a 1 lepton coin made in AD 29. On verse showing a litus, a staff used by the Roman priests to interpret omens at that time. You can see the litus staff there. That's rather interesting, isn't it? Next one, thanks. The famous silver shekel of Tyre. Every Jewish male over 20 had to pay a temple tax of half a shekel, reported in Exodus. The shekel was used by money changers, and John and Matthew have details of that. Jesus was asked Peter to catch a fish with a shekel in his mouth, and the wording from Matthew 17 is, "Go thou to the sea and cast a hook, and take up the fish that first cometh up. And when thou hast opened his mouth, thou shalt find a piece of money. That take and give unto them for me and thee." So this was how Jesus paid for his and Peter's share of the temple tax, the shekel. And then, of course, we come to the silver shekel being used in the betrayal of Jesus by Judas Iscariot. Judas said to the priests, "What will you give me, and I will deliver him unto you?" And they covenanted with him for 30 pieces of silver. By the law, 30 pieces of silver was the price of a servant or slave. Exodus 21. The Bible further reveals that Judas, who had betrayed him, when he saw that he was condemned, repented himself and brought again the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and elders. And he cast down the pieces of silver in the temple and departed and went and hanged himself. The chief priests took the silver pieces and said, "It is not lawful to put them into treasury, because it is the price of blood." And they took counsel and bought with them a potter's field to bury strangers. So that's how that evolved. Thus, the 30 pieces of silver, which the Romans paid for Judas's treachery, will possibly be recognised as the most important biblical coins. After the Roman Empire closed down the mint in Tyre, the Roman authorities allowed the Jewish rabbinim to continue minting Tyrian shekels in Judea, but with the requirement the coins should avoid objections that the Jews were given autonomy. They were replaced by the first coinage in 66 AD. So that's the story of the shekel of Tyre. That's the one that I bought from Noble Auction back in 2019. Next one, thanks. Now we come to the Judean procurator bronze coins. There are a series of coins minted in Roman Judea by the prefects and procurators between AD 6 and AD 66 in only one denominator, the bronze pruta. Coponius, the first Roman prefect of Judea, depicted the palm tree on the right, bearing 2 bunches of grapes. On his coinage, the obverse shows an ear of barley. Next, thanks. Pontius Pilate was the 5th prefect of the Roman province of Judea. On the obverse is shown a ladle calling a simpulum. With a long handle, it was used by priests to taste the wine that they poured over the head of an animal destined for sacrifice. The lepton was the lowest denomination coin in circulation. Next one, thanks. The first Jewish revolt coins. These coins were issued by the Jews after the Jerusalem and the Jewish temple were captured from the Romans in 66 AD. This coin has on the obverse shekel Israel year 3, and on the reverse Jerusalem the Holy. Next one. The Jewish zealots captured Jerusalem in 66 AD. They minted full half and quarter shekels to show their strong independence from Rome. To defy their Roman overlords, the coins all had Hebrew script. So there you see that coin, half shekel. Next one, thanks. The revolt by the Jews caused the Roman Emperor Nero to send Senator Vespasian to crush the revolt in 69 AD. After Nero's suicide, Vespasian became emperor and sent his son Titus to complete the task of destroying the Jewish rebels. This was achieved in 70 AD. The obverse has the face of Vespasian facing right, and on the reverse is shown a caduceus, a wand or rod entwined at one end by two serpents, each of whose bodies fold again in the form of two half circles, an attribute peculiar to the god Mercury. I'm sure you're familiar with that, John. Next one, please. These are some more coins of Vespasian. The gold Aurorus coin was struck to celebrate in Rome the vanishing of the Jews. The obverse had the head of Vespasian facing right with a laurel wreath. The reverse had the letter in three lines within a wreath. You can see them there, SPQR/PBOBCS. Next one. Further coinage, another gold one has the laureate head of Vespasian facing left and the obverse. On the right, a heifer is facing right with the letters Cos 7. Next one. Again, Vespasian coin shows a laureate head facing right. On the reverse is a palm tree. To the left, a Jewish warrior with hands bound behind his back. Behind him, a pile of weapons. A Jewess is seated on the right of the tree, propping her head in an attitude of mourning. Her left elbow on her knee and two shields at her feet. So another interesting coinage. Next one. Silver denarius from the Ephesus Mint, 74 AD, shows the laureate head of Vespasian facing right. On the reverse, victory is facing advancing right. Filleted wreath raised and extended right hand, palm frond in the left hand over the left shoulder. So different types of coins. Next one. And this one, a Jewish captive is seated right in an attitude of mourning beside a trophy of captured arms behind her. And the last one. This collection has taken many years to gather appropriate coins to illustrate the various passages in the Bible which Jesus used to teach in stories and parables, the wisdom he wanted to share with his fellow travellers. As with all students in their studies, the new knowledge and understandings helps to appreciate the early years, over 2,000 years ago, when fellow humans, under tremendous uncertainty of living, tried their best to survive. They sought to find a leader to teach them how to live a better life. They sought to find ways to live with the Roman conquerors and bring up their children in peace. The biblical coins as presented are indeed genuine and proven relics of a very important part of human history. The teachings have continued throughout the ages and will survive well into the future for all humans. It is a great privilege to collect, learn, and share these amazing memorials of antiquity. Thank you.
Well, we've got a couple of minutes before the afternoon tea time set down. Have we got any questions or comments to Barry?
Barry, the temple that you say Jesus taught him, is that still in existence?
No, the Romans destroyed the temple.
Could you answer, Steve?
The Romans destroyed the temple, pulled it all the way down just about the bedrock. There's just one retaining wall of the old temple Temple Ground Romantic. That's the western wall that you might hear about the Jews always going to pray for, because it's the last piece of their temple that still stands.
On the map of Jerusalem there, who occupies most of that? The Jews?
The Jews.
The Jews?
And then, of course, they're fighting of their neighbours who are trying to obtain the land, and there's continued conflict there. I don't know what the answer is going to be, but it's
Hasn't changed in 2000 years.
been going on for many years. I was at a conference in New York studying law and politics, and I had a friend from Israel and I had a friend from Egypt. And they wouldn't talk to each other, and I was the go-between. And I tried to get them together to talk, and they said, look, it goes back centuries. We just can't get together. How many have been to Jerusalem? How many have been to those areas? Hands up. 2, 3? Very good. Great. It's an impression, isn't it?
Impressive stuff, yes.
Yeah.
John, did you want us to ask you something?
The tribute penny, Barry.
Yes,
It's a rare coin, I guess.
Yes.
Well, it's actually one of the most common 1st century Roman denarii you can get, just because Emperor Tiberius didn't change his coin design. Unlike all of the other emperors, they put whatever the propaganda of the day was. Emperor Tiberius kept that same design for his whole reign of 20 years or whatever it was. So it's actually one of the most common denarii you can get. It's just so expensive because everybody wants one, because it's a tribute penny.
Supply and demand.
Like a donation dollar.
Supply and demand.
That shekel I got was, I got it from Jim Noble's auction, and I said, look, I'll only go to 1,000. It ended up being 3,000, and he persuaded me to accept it because it was such a good quality. So I was happy to take it.
That's another lesson for your lives. I won't make any
That's
comment.
a good example of that first levels of influence. Exactly.
Well, I think we can adjourn for a cup of tea or something. Same meeting. Because no matter what I do, I'll get one or both wrong.
Hey, I'll
Gary?
just leave it on that and
Take-
I'll just talk.
Yep.
Take the floor.
Yep.
Thank you, sir.
I don't think you see Gary in too many meetings, but you except here.
We're grateful when he comes. Thanks, Gary.
Righty, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for having me down here. And my decision was to talk on, seeing I was coming from Rocky, the Balham Gardener. I was trying to steal some information on it from the late Huey Armstrong. Did do a paper for us, and it probably was down at one of these 20 years ago or so, that he'd done a paper on it, and I can't find it, but anyway, I got on the computer and in a couple of books and I got a bit of stuff together, so we'll see how I go. The Balham Gardener is one of 3 tokens that were issued in Rockhampton, and they were ironmongers, which the research I done on it was basically that they had the Balham Gardener took out a half-page advertisement in Pew's Queensland Almanac in 1866, in which they described their wares as importers of iron, steel, lead, oils, paints, tools of every description, general furnishings, ironmonger, lamps, ropes, and other china, glassware, and earthenware. So it was a pretty cross-section of equipment that you might need for your house or for your business or build them, whatever they wanted to build. They give the address as Queen Street, Rockhampton in the business, but we live about 4 streets down from Queen Street. But that must have been where Gardner must have lived, because it's not businesses up there. The businesses are all probably about 3.5 km down towards the river, but which I found intriguing, because I didn't know that they were living so close to where we are. There's heaps in that area. It's full of early settlers, Rockhampton's buildings. It's up on the hill, and it's called the suburb's called the Range. And so I take it that's where he did live. The actual token, which is up there, and just a point of interest, the reverse of it with the penny token side there, The wreath is actually, they copied for the Rockhampton Coin Club badge, which I couldn't find mine, to bring down and show you that we used the wreath in the sunrise on the Rockhampton Coin Club. They produced that before I was in the club, which is probably about, I don't know, 40 years ago would have been, that they had that they got that from the Ballan Garden, and I think the main person behind that was Hugh and Boy Armstrong to have a connection with coin collecting and tokens. The other two tokens was the Mulligans, and they were mainly just an ironmonger store with all that kind of building equipment, steel, bronze, copper and all that stuff. And they had a penny and a halfpenny, and they're pretty freely available in both. You can usually pick them up somewhere along the line. And the other one is Stewart Hammett, which is Stewart's department store, which was a part of that one. It's still there in Rockhampton. It's been there about, I think from memory, I read the other day, it's 123 years it's been there, that shop at that same corner. It's still a department store, but they used to sell a lot more stuff at that time, which was clothing and furniture, and I don't think they went into any of the ironmonger stuff. It was mainly stuff sold in a department store, as we look at today with all the gear and that. So it was, From that, so back to Ballan Gardner, it's the token is, get the right page here, the specifications on it was minted by a John Craven Thornwaite. He was English. He come out to Sydney, I think it was around the 1849 or something, or in the early 1800s, and he was a token maker back in England, and obviously when he come out here, they started to do these things because of the shortness of supply of small denomination of currency. And as I said, it's a penny. Its composition is copper, weighs 18.9 grams, the diameter is 34 millimetres, smooth edge, and it's in Rennick's 54 and Andrew's 43. Is on the, I suspect that's the pages where it is at. The price of one of them now, like the latest price I could find on the internet trying to research was a few years ago, that something in not real good condition went for about $7,000. Now this one here is in Rocky. There's 3 or 4 people I know that have animals that have got them. They found them metal detecting around the Rockhampton coalfields and the area of central Queensland. But the ones that I've seen are as bleak as this, speakers. That one, it said that it come from a token museum, I think in Victoria was the thing on the photo where that had come from. But it had obviously, I'd say, been cleaned up because they don't look nothing like the 4 that I've seen, and that's the only other ones I've seen as that 4 of these photos of them. But it's what's the next bit here on this page? There it is here. Yeah, this Thornwaite, he was the first person to manufacture tokens and in metals in Australia, and he migrated to Sydney around 1849. His tokens were noteworthy for the lack of clarity of details and design, because the dies did not cut deep enough into the metals. He worked as a metallist, particularly after tokens were made illegal in New South Wales after 1868. His most accomplished tokens were produced in silver in 1854. He made a small number of threepences, silver tokens for James Campbell of Morphett, New South Wales, which were larger, thicker than normal currency issues and consequently represented about 33% more in metal content, so of the value. The reverse feature of this one is the wreath of wildflowers tied together at the base. The top design is the rising sun within the wreath of the denomination. I don't know what the stories behind the wreath or the rising sun is. Yeah, it's for some reason the design come from, I suppose, them down there working with the die makers in Sydney and that. But yeah, I've never been able to find out what the story behind that design is. What else we got? On that page, on that bit, I've done the physical thing of it. Top quality Australian tokens are extremely rare and historical. They have commanded similar, if not higher prices to their rare coin counterparts. As I don't know how many is here do collect the tokens, but it seems to be a lot of interest in that. And that Arthur Andrews book, I did pick up one, original one from 1926, I think it was from memory. I was just 21 was it? I was surfing on the internet, I don't know, probably 10, 15 years ago, and when I first started to see the Rocky tokens, and this book come up, and I paid $56 for it, and it was a one out of the Lane Cove library where they write them off or whatever, and I ended up buying it for some book lot in Newtown, Sydney for $56. Anyway, when I got it home, I was quite, because it still got all the cover and it still got the old library card in it and stuffs on it, and it had there, it was, actually got it a real meant to bring it there, it had something like £1, 2 and 6pence, halfpenny was the price of that, bought in 1960, it was just 62 I think it was, it had in that. So I was quite chuffed that I thought, oh, this is a genuine thing. And then I had a look on the other rare books to get, and the originals at that time were running anywhere from about $150 to $300 a book. So yeah, but I did have a copy, a facsimile of it, but the information's good in that one, but the plate, you know, the photo plates are shocking. They're just blurry, and I suppose they've done it for a reason, that to make it unique. That and his are in the original book, they're really good, clear things, but in that reproduction one, which was from about 1986, I think it was, the photos are terrible. Tokens played an important role in Australia because business had problems with finance side of it, so they officially allowed them to have tokens, and it was around about 10 years I think that they kept going, and New South Wales was the first state to ban them, or what do you call them, make them illegal, and West Australia was the last one. There was about probably a 5-year gap, so Queensland, New South Wales and others must have went off somewhere in between that. And the businesses that did get them, have them, and because to give some change, the answer was to have tokens. Tokens were issued by individuals, businesses to fill the void left by the extreme shortage of low denomination currency. Most were struck in copper, bronze, normally as pennies, and some did do half pennies, with a handful of threepences and 1 shilling pieces. Although the issuing of tokens in Australia usurped the royal prerogative of coining, the government authorities in Britain choose to turn a blind eye as they were unable to supply the needs for the colony. And although there was some early criticisms that the pieces were not legal tender, it was agreed that they would be better than nothing, and were grudgingly accepted by most of the people. Their designs usually incorporate the names of the companies that issued them, so surviving tokens give us an insight to the role they played by individuals and their business in the developing of the colony. While official coinage makes a social or political statement of a nation, tokens take their message to the level of the individual. There are no accurate figures to how many were ever produced in Australia, but it's believed to be in the millions, and all types were issued over the 16-year period. The earliest token dated was 1823, and it was issued by the Harbour firm of Macintosh and D. Graves for the Cascade sawmills. We were down in Tasmania a few months ago and went to the Cascade brewery, and I suspect it must have been around that area. That sawmill must have been, because no doubt in that era there was no shortage of timber in Tassie. It's generally acknowledged that the token was struck in London, that one, in 1824, prior to the departure from England, most likely at the Soho Mint of Matthew Bolton fame. The first tokens manufactured in Australia for general use were the tea stores owned by Samuel Peake and Samuel Peake and Co, and they issued in 1852, and they were made by that John Thornwaite, medalist and die singer, who emigrated to the colony as a free settler in 1849. The primitive tools that he had meant that his tokens were struck in very limited numbers. His name is attached to some of the greatest tokens, including pieces such as Jamboree and a Kiama penny. I'm not familiar with it, but obviously Kiama's south of Sydney. And anyone know where Jamboree is?
Just south, further south.
In the south.
Same place. Yeah.
Not far from where we live.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to say that we live at Robertson, which is just on a hill above Jamboree.
Yeah.
And to get from our place, which is pretty high up, you know, we're at 750 metres high, and we're not the highest in Robertson, quite a high place. You go down one of the two passes, Jamboree Mountain Road. So it's a village between Robertson on the heights and halfway, almost down to the bottom of the Minamurra Valley, which the Minamurra River flows there. There's Jamboree, and then a little bit further on you go over the coastal hill and you're at Kiama. Kiama's a beach resort and very popular, expensive real estate. Jamboree is not so much, it's still a lovely place, a rural village. But you're right, there were two brothers, one who had the business in Jamboree and the other at Kiama. The Kiama's the rarest, but Jamboree is still pretty expensive.
Yeah, just as a point of interest, friends of ours used to take Soul Brothers Circus used to have a park, or they had a property there at Kiama. I don't know what part. I never went there, but the family used to go down there for holidays, and they'd rest all their animals and all their vans and tent stuff and all that in Kiama. But I've never been there. Right, but very few examples are known to exist of those two that we're just talking about, and they should stand shoulder to shoulder to value of our greatest coin rarities. Another legendary token, the Mason and Cully, or C-U-L-L-E-Y, Cully, is regarded as a symbol of the time. Its fame really began in 1930 when renowned collector Ed Wills paid £100 for one of the only three known specimens, passing the holy dollar that he was offered at the time for £7. Perhaps the most famous Australian token is the Aboriginal threepence struck by the Sydney jewellers Hogarth and Erickson. This is a very rare token, was the only colony piece to bear a design of an Indigenous person. After being made illegal in Victoria in 1863, tokens were banned in New South Wales in 1868, and the last state to declare them illegally was Western Australia in 1878. Now there's, I went through and there was a photo here which I thought I brought down a copy, which I don't have, but there's a bell and garden, someone's turned it into a necklace or something. But and there's quite other photos of some of them are really damaged. It's like that's it, yeah, and that, but yeah, so it was certainly yeah, it would. And there was, but I did put the other one on there. It was like someone had put it on a train track. But yeah, so that's about my spiel on the Bell and Gardner. And I found it interesting doing the search, but as my wife knows, I'm one of these persons that gets going and doesn't leave things to the last minute, and trying to put it together, and the help of some granddaughters to put it on the stick, because I'm not really savvy with a lot of stuff. I can still rub the paper and that, but yeah, so that's the spiel on the Bell and Gardner, and that, and
So, Gary, did I interpret you correctly that in your extensive years in the numismatic world in Rockhampton, you've seen basically a handful of these?
Yeah, there's
four or five.
Yeah, there was 2 members had metal detectors back 30 odd year ago, or it might be, and they found them in the goldfield areas. I think one from memory. One was found up Canoona Way, which is about a 30-minute drive north of Rock. Well, now it's 30-minute drive. It was probably a day and a half's walk, or 2 days walking a horse up to the Canoona goldfields. And a couple of others that they found were out towards the Clermont goldfields, which is just up part of between Emerald. So it's probably today to drive there 3 hours, and it's a bit further off that. So it was, you know, a fair hike, but the rail was running out through. But
the bottom line out of all this is, over 30 or 40 years, you've seen a handful that gives you an idea of just how scarce in that area where they should be.
Yeah, I'd seen one that Huey and Vi had, and I no doubt it was sold. It could have been, or they might have, the family might have held on to it. I must ask Alan or John when I see him next time, because he, as I said, he did do a paper on it. But it's certainly, the mulligans you see around, and the student hammer, you will see them around, and you know, you do see them, and people ring up about them and that occasionally for them. But I've never ever had anyone ring or talk or anything in the paper about a Bell and Gardner being found in the garden or in great-great-granddad's collection.
Well, that answers a very important question. How scarce are these? Very scarce.
Yeah.
What other questions have we got from the floor?
Well, could we just go back to the numismatic reef?
Yeah.
Hang on.
Jonathan David will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's no known plant that I'm aware of.
It's a mixture of plants, it looks like.
Exactly, there are shamrocks.
You got shamrocks there.
And I think there's flannel.
Your shamrocks don't grow here. I think they do they, in Australia? No.
There's bulrushes at the top, and there's a flannel.
Yeah.
And something that looks to me like a flannel flower.
There could be a grevillea there.
What's this one here?
That's a flannel flower.
All right.
Well, I don't know, but it's a fanciful flower of some sort. I can't see the grevillea.
Just near the P, next to the P of the penny, that could be a grevillea, it could be a daisy or something.
Yeah, it's more of a daisy sharp. There's something up here. Yeah, but if it's got shamrock there, well, that certainly has had the English influence on the
Irish.
Sorry.
I just wondered whether that was a medallic pun on the name Gardner. I don't know. There sometimes is in the secret messages in coins.
Just to point of issue, that Bell fella, they started out, but I don't know if they really opened up the shop together. There was a falling out in that. I read it a bit, but I didn't put that bit in of the Bell side of it. But he went ahead.
I've had a look. There's no symbol of a bell at all in that side. No heraldics. So
unless one of the mystery flowers is supposed to be some sort of bell flower or something.
We've been hanging down like that.
His colleagues know the devices on medals and tokens and other coins, which refer to the names, are called a rebus. And I can't see any evidence other than just a question about the
Does anyone know whether Gardner had an Irish connection? Because it is most unusual to see something like that, if it is a shamrock, without the accompanying rose or thistle.
Exactly.
Just a
English country gardener.
something for you to follow up on.
Yes, I will. And John, you were...
I was just going to ask, with these tokens, when the merchant issued them, was the understanding that he would redeem them or she would redeem them for coins of the realm? Or was that not really a principle?
No, I think mainly it was you went back and you had to spend it. Like you couldn't go back and say, now can I have a real penny? Or,
In theory, I think the theory was that if you gathered up a whole pound's worth, he'd give you a pound note. If he had a pound note, he'd give you sort of thing. But
That was certainly on the English series, wasn't it? You know?
Depends how big a day they had, I suppose, or how the money flow was going, or how their sales were.
John, did you have another?
I can answer that question. It varied according to the merchant that had issued the tokens to the firm. Some then wouldn't accept the tokens back, others did. I have a particular interest, as Kevin knows, in one particular token, the Mary token, Queensland, with my wife's great-great-grandfather. And we do know, as a fact, he always redeemed any tokens throughout the life of his firm that came back. And they were always redeemed for coin of the realm. If required. So the answer to the question from my own experience is it varied according to the individual merchant or the company.
So most of them must have either been melted down or, you know, there'd be quite a number would have been lost and that, but at the end of the day there would be a lot that, you know, if they said were millions, well, like the Bell and Gardner one it's pretty elusive.
Well, I do know that tokens were still turning up in pocket change in the 1930s and 1940s occasionally. So they just continued to obviously wiggled out of change by collectors.
It might have been a case of pass the parcel, you know. Oh no, I've got one of these, you know. I'll put it in with a group of stuff, or
put it in the church offering.
Well,
I've counted church offerings. I know weird stuff turns up in those church offerings.
The question was
pass that round. That's actually
the spears pointing to the rising sun. Are they grass tree spears?
I'd say they're out of those things that grow in the
Can I just say that a hell of a lot of those pennies ended up back in England as well.
All right.
Because I've been buying them hand over fist out of England.
What, the tokens?
The tokens, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they
Lots of rare ones. Yeah, I've got one of those. I've got a Bell and Gardner. It came out of the UK. All of my stuff has come from the UK.
Yeah, well, that's what they might have done. Hey?
They just seem to end up back there.
But I think you'll find that these were very collectible in the UK because in Baldwin's basement sale that happened a few years ago, that was there was a top condition Bell and Gardner piece there that had been in the Baldwin family for
years,
100 or so years, 150 years or something like that since they started. Anyway,
thanks for listening to my little bit of a story. Hope it got people thinking about tokens, but it certainly had me thinking about them.
And travel to Rockhampton where they're not plentiful.
Thanks.
Well, if you look at your schedules, you'll see that we've got a little segment in here noted down as members speak on their displays if not already done so. So I've spoken to David Meader to start this off. And he's not going to talk about the coins that he's got because I think tomorrow you're going to talk to us extensively about your medieval coins, but you would be good enough to tell us a few words about the books, David, that he's got there.
What about we just turn our chairs
I'll
around?
warn you that I could wait for
I'm right, thanks.
a couple of hours, so cut me off when you think of it. But shall I do it from over there?
Why not?
Yeah.
I can see you perfectly.
He's going over to where the books are. Turn the camera.
Okay, the display here consists of two parts. The case of coins, which essentially is just coins illustrating the talk that Judy gave just before lunch, and my which is on tomorrow morning, just before morning tea. And I won't attempt to show too much of the coins, other than the fact that my talk is mainly just about the 20 years either side of 1500. And there's a lot of interesting things happen there, a lot of interesting people too. So I'll name drop like anything, but I'll miss out a lot of events too. So it'll just be an overview. But I did want to bring the books, because there's a lot of books that you may not see, and you should be aware of them if you're at all interested in history, even if you don't have them. The fact that you know they exist means they've got to be somewhere around, and someone's got a copy if you need one. Now, the year 1500, of course, is often a convenient end of the medieval period and beginning of the modern period. Roughly, it's the closest one with 2 zeros at the end of it. And unfortunately, many books are written up to that date, and anything sort of with medieval in it, like there's a really interesting one, if you don't know it, the medieval coins of Bohemia, Hungary and Poland, issued by Spink in 2015. So a relatively new book, but a really good one. It only goes up to the year 1500. You don't know what happened after that. You've got to usually look for another book. And that is probably the least documented area. So you get modern coin books, modern coins, but 1500 to 1600, apart from the thin red line, the British books, you find a bit. But anyway, I've done my best there on that. But what else have I got interesting? Paper coins. Is anyone interested in paper coins? This is not just medieval; it's the whole lot. Right from the early beginnings of paper coins, which were really in the Carolingian period, right through to modern paper coins. And I say modern, I mean these things date clearly. These are not necessarily the last editions. So you might find there's new popes and new things. And popes tend to not last very long, the way it works. So there's a lot of them.
Right. David, what are papal coins? Where do they circulate? Only in the Vatican, or were they?
Not at all. You've got to remember that in the medieval times especially, the popes were distant. I mean, Pope is who is he? He's the Bishop of Rome. But in the 14th century, they spent most of their time in the papal palace of Avignon in France. So coins of Avignon that were minted by the popes, also papal coins. Eventually went back to Rome, but their coins, they had this in the 18th century and 19th century, had this entity in Italy before Italy became Italy as a country, of the Papal States, which went right from Bologna right down to Rome, half of Italy, and they circulated there as well. So yeah, they circulated far more than just the Vatican as they do today. And of course they're part of the Eurozone, so papal euros of course are fairly scarce because the small states like the Vatican and Liechtenstein, they're restricted to only a small number of issues. Alright, so that's that. So this also illustrates what I was talking about. It's a very interesting book, this one, if you want to know something about Italian coins. Now, Italian medieval coins, absolutely fantastic, right? But there's lots of them. Unlike Britain, where there's mainly royal coins, Italian coins, almost every city-state in Italy issued thousands and thousands of them. So you need some guide through them. Coins and mints of medieval Italy, but once again, up to 1500. If you want to find information about 16th and 17th century, you need to know another book. That illustrates the difficulty of trying to find the span. If you want to know what the difference is between medieval and modern coins, don't go by the date, because here's a book full of coins, the early dated coins of Europe, 1234 to 1500. And I mentioned the one, a Danish coin, 1234. Who could resist putting 1, 2, 3, 4 in Arabic on the coin? The Danes couldn't, so they minted one. Very rare coin, but that's thought to be the first dated coin in Arabic, certainly. But a lot of these coins in this, they're Roman numerals as well. But they well and truly in the 15th century the dated medieval coins. And that's a catalogue, pretty complete catalogue. Judy showed you this morning. French coins are difficult. Why are French coins difficult? Because there's always two series. There's the royal coins minted by the kings of France, and then there's the baronial coins, or feudal coins, as they're called, minted by all the various duchies and when issuing authorities right through France. And they're actually in the majority in the medieval period compared to royal coins. And I guess they circulated where they circulated, like the passing off of the tokens, right? We just talked about. Illustration of Gresham's law. Gresham was, Lord Gresham as he was the Lord Mayor of London and banker to Queen Elizabeth I. And he really understood this inflation business that John was talking about this morning, because his law was bad money suppresses good money. The thing is, if you have two forms of money, like a token and a penny, British penny or something, which one will you spend in preference? The one you want to get rid of most, the poorer the coin. This was the trouble in the Depression, of course, when we had gold. Nobody wanted to spend gold, they wanted to spend the paper money. Because they realised paper money is just a promissory note. Gold is gold, gold is money, real money, and better than anything else. That's why they ordered it, and that's why they had to pass a law saying we weren't allowed to. So there's interesting books here. This was an interesting one, I must say. Portuguese coins. The Portuguese are the most avid coin collectors I know of their own coins, and very hard to purchase coins. Good coins in Portugal, you get them by auction in Portugal if you want to. But this catalogue here, money, Portuguese money, not just Portugal, European Portugal, but the whole territories of what was being so Macau, Goa, Brazil, you know, it's all in here, right from the year block of the Islamic and Roman times actually before then, and right up to modern times. So it's a must-have if you're interested in Portuguese coins. There's a story behind it. It's hard to get, this book. To get this modern book, I had to write to the Portuguese Numismatic Association, who've now taken over from the author and publish it every now and then. Well, you don't need to be an expert in languages, but you should, if you collect non-British coins, have some smattering of language when it comes to coin descriptions. I remember I bought Polish coins, and I looked at them and I thought, oh, that looks pretty cheap. I'll put a bid for that one. I didn't understand Polish at all. And it's not so much the coin, what's on the coin that you're worried about. What you really have to do is what the faults are. And if you can't understand the language, you might buy something that's got a fault you didn't know. So I didn't understand the word for bent in Polish. I bought a coin which was a bit crinkled, that's all. No big deal.
You know the word now.
Look, also, of course, there's the history. If you're interested in history, which I am, of course, you can't collect this stuff and not be into history. I should draw your attention to John Julius Norris. Anybody read his? Know him? Yeah, he's a British author. He writes quote history. It's not academic history. It is popular history for understanding for non-professional historians. Little lovely books. And this book, The Four Princes, right on the topic in the sense of the great men of that period of the 1500s. Also, of course, what was going on in the 1500s, the discovery by the Portuguese of the passage around Cape of Good Hope to India. And that's an interesting book, The Conquerors, because they went in as conquerors, not to join the queue in India to load their ship, but to make sure everybody else got out of the way. So, yeah. And finally, before I stop here, another interesting book. Hard to get, I think, but it's about the two sieges of Rhodes. I was talking to Bernie in the break there, and he's going there, quite right. If you're really interested in history, it's a great place to visit. And the Knights of St John at war, 1480, which is the beginning of my talk, to 1522, which is 2 years afterwards, and there are two coins in the display related to that. But this is all about one of the princes that Norwich writes about, Suleiman the Magnificent, and his conquest, final conquest of Rhodes, and getting rid of the crusading order of the Knights of St John from Rhodes. And what did they do? They went to Malta and started up there, and that's another story. All right, probably enough.
from my observation, almost all the other displays are going to be talked about tomorrow, aren't they? Or have been talked about today. Do we want to have a 5 minutes of general discussion, or have we had enough of the day, or we've got to fill in till sort of 6 o'clock? It's only 20 to 5 now.
Time to go.
Okay.
What's planned for tonight?
Plan for tonight? Have you ordered your dinner?
No.
No dinner for you then. So
I've
go,
ordered
if you
ours.
haven't ordered your dinner, go and order your dinner at the reception.
Front counter.
Tell them your room number,
Room number.
and then they'll deliver it